Expelled college students of Reddit. Why are you expelled? Installing Bitcoin miners on all the computers in a video editing lab. I shot a firework out of my ass in a campus-owned house. Apparently you can get kicked out for not showing up to class and failing everything. Who knew? I had a friend who skipped all classes and failed everything because all he wanted to do was play LOL. He got a warning that if he didn't get his grades up he would be suspended for a year. He got suspended. When he went back to the school a year later the same thing happened again. Now he can't go back to that college again. For being off campus with a member of the opposite sex without proper supervision. No, seriously. I had a particularly rough semester and got D in a class that I had previously dropped after about a week the prior semester because my schedule was too busy then. Department rules say that you can't attempt a class for credit more than twice, including drops, so I got kicked out of my major. I was 14 hours away from graduation at the time. The academic advisor said that I could either change my major, so basically start college all over, or F off for a year and then come back on probation. So I guess I'm not expelled per se, but I'm taking an involuntary gap year. My roommate got expelled for basically never going to class, not even when there was an important exam. He spent all night smoking weed with me and playing video games, not with me, and then slept all day until about 5 PM. Like I would wake up, go to my 8:30 lecture, get lunch, go to lab 2 to 5, then come back to my room and my roommate was still sleeping. I found out the following summer that he had gotten a letter from the university asking him not to come back. Last I heard of him, he had enrolled at a commuter school where he made the dean's list. Not me, but happened to a teammate on my rowing team. He got busted for drinking, which isn't an expellable offense. But to get back at the rat that caught him, he shoved into a bag, went to the guy's first floor window, and threw it into the rat's room. What made things worse is that the rat had a box fan in the window. The sh hit it and sprayed everywhere in the room. Literally, the sh hit the fan. He was promptly expelled. Currently I'm aware of a group of international students getting expelled from my school. They've been whispering to each other during exams in another language, and as luck would have it my professor happens to speak that language and has been slowly building a case against them without their knowing it. The kids somehow also got the solutions to every homework and exam last semester, which is very similar to what we've been assigned this semester. However, the kids are so effing lazy they blindly copy whole solutions, not realizing numbers are different. Sometimes units are metric, and they answer in English, and one problem asked for something completely different than they solved for using the exact procedure to solve last semester's homework. They're absolutely effed, and I'm kinda excited to see it. One of them had a 3.75 GPA, was on the verge of being auto-admitted to our MS/BS program. Has probably been cheating his whole college career. We're 2 semesters away from graduation. Plot twist, the advisor to that program is the instructor that is currently building the case against them. So basically that guy is mega effed. Professor is a savage. He's been grading all their homework and exams like everything was fine, and one day unleashed a dossier of B justice to comb. I was making a search engine for our school teacher evaluation page. It absolutely blew up in popularity and a large portion of the school was using it, about 5k views per day. Essentially it was like Rate My Professors, except it used the evils that they force students to do at the end of the class as data. I also added features that made it more desirable to students. It became so popular that it was showing up on the front page of Google for certain teacher names. Some of those teachers had low ratings and got pissed off and complained. I had unintentionally violated IP laws because the evaluations were under password protections and my site was not. The only reason I didn't get expelled was because the dean of my department had my back. He did research and concluded the information should not have been private in the first place, then sent a public information request to make it, so my project did not break the law. I definitely had people asking for my expulsion for a scary amount of time. When I was in college I got suspended 3 times for bad grades. At one point my GPA was a 1.0. I finally got it together and graduated with a degree in finance, and a few years later went back and got a second bachelor's in accounting. I think my GPA is a 3.2 now. I'm not working in finance or accounting because I can't find a job. I mostly just hate my life now and wish for death. I was expelled back in my 4th year of college. I've dealt with social anxiety since childhood, and it came to a head in my 3rd year when I was having panic attacks frequently. I got help, but by then it was too late for my grades because I had been barely passing classes by the skin of my teeth. I was a 4th year Comp C major who didn't know how to program at all. I tried to get back on the horse after going through therapy for my anxiety, but I felt so defeated that my grades slipped further into the hole I had dug for myself. I think the quarter I got kicked out I had 2 F's, 2 D's and a C. The dean sent me a letter saying I was done with engineering. I took time to get my act together, got a part-time job, lived in a shell apartment with 7 people living in a space meant for 4 people at the absolute maximum. I worked minimum wage and realized I needed to finish school. I saw my undergrad counselor numerous times, who very graciously helped me. I needed to write out a contract addressed to the dean with my detailed plan on how I was going to prove I was worthy of being readmitted and the classes I would take to qualify for graduation. It took a while, but I eventually managed to get readmitted by working my ass off, taking summer school courses which counted toward my major, and getting a 3.0 average, then following up by getting good grades once they let me back in. It was tough, because I needed therapy for so many years, but I didn't want to accept it until my breakdown in my 3rd year. I wish I had gotten help sooner, but I truly thought I could handle it all on my own. And I felt ashamed that I wasn't able to. But I'll say this, I don't regret for a second that I ended up getting help. I was a little embarrassed about it first, but I soon got over that. I still have some days where anxiety is in the back of my mind, but I'm a lot better now, and I graduated. If you're struggling in school, just know that even if you get kicked out, that doesn't mean it's the end for you if you honestly want to finish. I spent too much time drinking and not going to class. I was a junior with a 1.6 overall GPA. University said they didn't need my look around there and would open my spot for someone who would appreciate it. This got my attention. I went to the dean and talked with him for a couple of hours trying to get back in. He said no, 19 out of 20 of you guys go back to doing the same thing. I told him I would be the exception. He gave me another chance. From then on out it was 4.0 every semester. I finally got my GPA up over 2.5 so I could graduate. I made sure and went back to the dean's office to thank him and tell him that I was that 1 out of 20 that made it. Expelled because my GPA dropped below the competitive level for the engineering school at my college. I was given the option of transferring to a different school. They recommended I go into the humanities or be expelled. Well, thankfully I had a job from the previous summer that was willing to hire me on full time before this happened, so I took the expulsion and went to work full time. Since then, I've gotten my certifications and work in the trades doing fairly well for myself. So, yay. Was expelled the first time I went to college, back in the 90s. I remember on orientation day, we walked by the fraternities and my dad got all excited. Walked up to the Phi Kappa Taus. They were pretty cool. Acted all interested in me. I didn't look around anywhere else. Hell, I was 17 and very intimidated. I rushed them, and turns out, they were massive party animals. I lived and worked 40 minutes away from school, and had a girlfriend back home. So far, right? I scheduled all my classes at 7 to 11 AM. It was hard to get up at 5 and drive in to school and pay attention in a 1,000 seat lecture hall. So I started to stay at the frat house and blow off my classes. The first semester I got a 0.0. The next, I got a 0.33, 1D. I wasn't the only one expelled from school that year. Me and 4 other guys were competing for the lowest GPA. What a refined waste. Stupid colleges wasted on the young. I went back in my 30s and got my degrees, but I wasted a tremendous amount of time working jobs for people. Personally knew a bright individual that was kicked out of a prestigious university for skipping too many classes. He showed up for the important classes, got A's on all of the tests, but due to the fact that he had missed too many classes, he failed all of them. Must not have read that page of the handbook. He now works at the local grocery store and I see him when I come home on breaks. I was expelled 3 years ago from a small private liberal arts university 2 weeks before I was supposed to graduate. I was in an upper level algorithms course for my computer science major, and instead of a final the professor assigned a large research project on an extremely niche area of the subject. I had other classes to worry about finishing as well, so admittedly I didn't prioritize the paper as much as I should have. 3 weeks before it was due, the professor required us to submit a rough draft so he could critique and help us. My topic was so niche that I was only able to find one text on it, but it was a really good source with a very long mathematical proof, like 3 pages worth. So obviously I was going to cite this proof as the fulcrum for my paper. There was no way I could do this sort of math on my own. I could only find a physical copy of this source from the library. There was no digital copy, so in order to use and cite it in my paper I would have to transcribe 3 pages of mathematical proof by typing it in. That sounds easy enough, but the thing with mathematical papers is they use a lot of symbols. It's how the math is demonstrated. I used a language called LaTeX, which allows you to input things and make everything look nice, but it's time consuming. This took me nearly 4 hours, but I finally had a digital copy of my proof. I didn't have time to write anything more than an abstract for my rough draft, and I cited my source in the works cited section. So I turned in this to my professor as if to say, I don't have much, but this proof was hard to acquire, and I will be basing my paper around it. He calls me in the next day to inform me he has reported me to the Academic Affairs Council for plagiarism. I'm dumbfounded. I explained my reasoning for what I turned in, and how I had no intention of plagiarizing work that I clearly cited on a rough draft no less, to which his response was, that is for the council to decide. I appear before the council, try to explain everything in layman's terms, how I had no idea it's even possible to be found guilty of plagiarism for an incomplete work, how I would never try to steal intellectual work 2 weeks before I'm supposed to graduate, how if I had known this was possible I have turned in nothing, but they are having none of it. I will never forget how they asked me why I didn't just photocopy the textbook and submit that. Given that I had a derogatory mark on my record from my sophomore year, when I cheated of my friend's test, they found grounds to immediately remove me from campus. As in, they told me I had 6 hours to pack my things and leave or they would call the police and I would be found guilty of trespassing. I cried as I had to quickly pack my things and move back in with my parents, who were beside themselves. I later saw a rumor on the campus yak that I had been expelled for rape, which really drove the dagger into my heart. My girlfriend left me later that week and the silence I received from friends was deafening. I had been deeply involved in the campus community, at one point serving as the vice president of the student body, serving on the committee that selected the new university president, and many other groups on campus. I was to be one of the 3 students who spoke at the graduation ceremony, and I was to carry our class banner as we entered the ceremony. Thankfully my story has a happy ending. By the time my classmates were crossing the stage, I had already found a job and was gainfully employed. Where I had been myopic about my future after college, I now suddenly had a fire to regain what was taken from me. I'm on track to finish my bachelor's this year, while also working at a Fortune 500. I've never shared this story with anyone who doesn't know me closely, and I'm hesitant to speak to a professional counselor about my struggles with this and an abusive ex-girlfriend, and perhaps that's something I should do. I hope someday I'm able to prove that you can lose everything and still persevere and rebuild. Every year on April 25th, the day they expelled me, I take myself out to a nice restaurant and promise not to let something like that happen again.